So, let's talk about the Western Cape. Beautiful place, right? But like any good story, there's another side to it, a much darker side that doesn't make it into the tourist brochures. We're talking about a world where a human life has a price tag, where disputes aren't settled in court but with a phone call and a payment. It's a complex web of gangs, taxi wars, and even insurance fraud, turning ordinary streets into crime scenes. In this video, we're going to peel back that postcard layer and look at some of the individuals who pulled the trigger. This is our countdown of 10 of the most notorious convicted hitmen in the Western Cape. Let's get into it. We start with a case that absolutely rocked South Africa, a story so full of betrayal it could be a Shakespearean tragedy. Remember the name Taliepe Petersen, a musical icon, a beloved figure in the Cape Town community? His murder in 2006 wasn't just a crime, it was a national heartbreak. And at the center of the plot was the man who pulled the trigger, Wahid Hassan. The whole thing was staged to look like a robbery gone wrong, a common enough tragedy, but the truth was far more sinister. The investigation that followed slowly unraveled the robbery narrative, pointing instead to a conspiracy that hit shockingly close to home. The mastermind, it turned out, was Taliepe's own wife, Najwa Petersen, who hired Hassan and others to kill her husband. The trial was a media sensation, and the conviction brought a small measure of closure. Hassan was found guilty and handed a hefty 24-year prison sentence for his role in the murder and the accompanying robbery charge. It was a clear message. You can't get away with this. Every major criminal enterprise, every big heist or elaborate hit needs a supporting cast. In the tragic murder of Taliepe Petersen, one of those key supporting actors was a man named Abdor Rassiet Mjedi. He wasn't the one who fired the gun, but according to the courts he was just as guilty. He was an integral part of the conspiracy orchestrated by Najwa Petersen, a crucial cog in the machine that led to Taliepe's death. Mjedi was tried alongside Wahid Hassan, and the evidence presented painted a damning picture of his involvement. While Hassan was the trigger man, Mjedi was convicted on charges of murder and robbery, making it clear in the eyes of the law that participation is as serious as pulling the trigger. As reported by the Post newspaper at the time of the sentencing, Abdor Rassiet Mjedi was also handed a 24-year prison sentence, the same as Hassan. If you're in on the plot, you're in for the time. We move now from a single, high-profile murder to a man who made a career out of killing. This is where the world of contract killings gets even colder and more terrifying. Meet Findile Velum, a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone familiar with the brutal taxi wars that have plagued the Western Cape. This wasn't about a once-off payment or a crime of passion. For Velum, murder was a profession. He was a hitman for hire, a specialist in the violent conflicts that erupt over lucrative taxi routes, a problem that has claimed hundreds of lives in South Africa. Velum wasn't just any hitman, he was prolific and feared. His reputation preceded him. When you wanted someone in the rival taxi association taken out, Velum was the man you called. He was linked to a string of assassinations, turning public spaces like taxi ranks into killing fields. Sowetan Live reported on his reign of terror, detailing how he was eventually brought to book for at least 2 contract killings, though authorities suspected him of many more. The investigation to bring him down was a massive undertaking, piecing together evidence from multiple crime scenes and convincing terrified witnesses to speak out against a man known for his ruthlessness. The court heard the chilling details of his crimes, the cold and calculated manner in which he executed his targets, and the climate of fear he created within the taxi industry. The judge threw the book at him, and then some. Findile Velum was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus an additional 63 years in prison. The sentence was designed to ensure that he would spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. There's a particularly vile category of contract killing, one that turns a system designed to protect families into a motive for murder. I'm talking about insurance policy killings. The idea is simple and sickening. Take out a life insurance or funeral policy on someone, hire a hitman to kill them, and then cash in on the payout. It's a crime that is both brutally violent and coldly financial. And in this world, we find Phumlani Kusheka, a man convicted of being the hired gun in just such a scheme. The case, as detailed by the National Prosecuting Authority, is a chilling example of this trend. He was convicted for his part in an insurance-related murder, a crime that the NPA successfully prosecuted. The investigation likely involved unraveling a complex trail of financial documents, phone records, and witness testimony to connect the policyholder, the middleman, and the hitman. These cases are notoriously difficult to crack because the mastermind is often careful to keep their distance from the actual violence. But in this case, the chain of evidence led directly to Kusheka. The court showed no mercy. Recognizing the heinous nature of killing for an insurance payout, the judge handed Phumlani Kusheka a life sentence for the murder, plus an additional 15 years for other charges related to the crime. Sometimes, a contract killing isn't a quiet single-target assassination. Sometimes, it's a loud, brutal massacre designed to eliminate a target and anyone who happens to be with them. This was the case in Bishop Lavis in 2022, a community all too familiar with gang violence. A triple murder sent shockwaves through the area, and the man convicted for this horrific crime was Enrico Slauers. His case highlights the extreme violence associated with gang-related hits, where collateral damage is not just a risk, but often part of the terrifying message being sent. According to Cape Town ETC, the incident was a brutal display of force. Slauers, a known affiliate of a local gang, was hired to take out a target. But the job wasn't clean. He didn't just kill his intended victim, he murdered 2 other people who were with the target at the time. This level of violence is a hallmark of gang warfare, where hits are used to settle scores, enforce dominance, and instill fear. The police investigation faced the usual challenges of gang-related crime fear and intimidation. Despite these hurdles, detectives were able to build a strong enough case to bring Slauers to trial. The court's verdict was decisive. Enrico Slauers was found guilty and sentenced to a staggering 57 years behind bars. The lengthy sentence was a direct response to the brutality of the crime, a triple murder. It sent a clear message that the justice system would come down hard on gang hitmen who perpetrate mass violence. The North Pine execution. Reagan Davids. A quiet suburban street, the kind of place you'd think is safe. Then gunshots shatter the peace. A car speeds away. This is the scene of a contract-style murder that took place in North Pine, and the man held responsible is Reagan Davids. His case is a chilling reminder that these calculated killings aren't confined to gang hotspots or underworld dealings. They can happen anywhere, spilling into seemingly peaceful neighborhoods and leaving a trail of devastation. The investigation, as reported by the Cape Argus, pieced together the events that led to the killing. Davids was not acting alone, but his role was central to the plot. The prosecution presented evidence that this was a planned assassination, not a spontaneous act of violence. The trial was a complex affair, requiring the state to prove intent, planning, and Davids's direct involvement beyond a reasonable doubt. In cases like this, where the hitman is often a stranger to the victim, building that chain of evidence is a meticulous process. But the prosecution was successful, convincing the court of Davids's guilt in the brutal North Pine murder, which also involved other serious charges. Reagan Davids was sentenced to 2 life terms plus an additional 83 years in prison. This colossal sentence ensures that he will never again pose a threat to society. The gang boss assassin, Ricardo de Kock. In the world of organized crime, power is everything, and when you want to take power you often have to eliminate the person who holds it. This brings us to the assassination of a high-ranking gang boss from the notorious Hard Livings gang. It was a major power play in the Cape Town underworld, and the man convicted of being the triggerman was Ricardo de Kock. The hit on the Hard Livings boss was brazen and public, a clear message to everyone. As the Daily Voice reported, de Kock was identified as the shooter who carried out the assassination. The police and prosecutors knew that securing a conviction would be a monumental task. In gang-related murders, witnesses are often too terrified to talk and evidence can be scarce. However, a breakthrough in the investigation led to de Kock and his accomplices being arrested and charged. The trial was a tense affair with heavy security, as the state laid out its case, linking de Kock directly to the assassination and the firearms used in the crime. Ultimately, the court found the evidence compelling. Ricardo de Kock was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He also received additional time for related firearm charges, a common add-on in these cases. De Kock's life sentence meant that the man who took a king was now permanently removed from the chessboard himself. The Garden Route hitman, Mbulelo Jack. The phenomenon of insurance-related murders isn't just a big city problem. It spreads its tentacles into smaller towns and communities like those along the picturesque Garden Route. And one of the men convicted for carrying out the murder was Mbulelo Jack. He was part of a team of hitmen hired to kill a victim so that the mastermind could cash in on insurance and funeral policies. The National Prosecuting Authority, or NPA, detailed the case, which was heard in the Western Cape High Court. The plot was hatched by a relative of the victim who stood to gain financially from the death. This person then sourced and hired a crew, including Mbulelo Jack, to execute the plan. Building the case required investigators to follow the money and connect the dots. The NPA's prosecutors meticulously assembled this evidence to present a coherent and undeniable narrative of a murder-for-hire scheme to the court. The High Court found Mbulelo Jack guilty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for his role as a hitman in this deadly insurance scam. Jack's case is another sad chapter in the story of greed turning deadly. It's one thing for the state to build a case against a hitman, but it's another thing entirely when the hitman himself stands up and confesses to his crimes. This is the unusual and honestly chilling story of Daliwanga Mandela, a self-confessed contract killer whose testimony blew the lid off his own violent career. His confession provided a rare and terrifying glimpse into the life of a man who killed for money, not just once, but multiple times. According to a report by IOL, Mandela's confession came during his trial in the Cape Town High Court. He admitted to his role in various contract killings, laying out the grim details of his work. This kind of confession is a double-edged sword for prosecutors. On one hand, it's a guaranteed conviction. On the other, the details that emerge are often horrifying, painting a picture of a society where life is shockingly cheap. For men like Mandela, the act of killing becomes a job, a task to be completed for a client. The court, faced with a man openly admitting to being a professional killer, had no choice but to impose a sentence that reflected the depth of his criminality. Daliwanga Mandela was convicted and handed multiple decade sentences for his confessed crimes. His story is a stark reminder that behind many unsolved murders there might be a contract killer. Gang assassinations are often a team sport. It's rarely just one person acting alone. A prime example of this is the hit on a prominent gang leader, which led to the conviction of a trio of schollies, a local term for gangsters or criminals. One of these three men was Keenan Van Rooyen. He, along with his two partners, was convicted for his role in a carefully planned assassination designed to eliminate a rival. The assassination was a significant event in the Cape Flats underworld. As reported by the Daily Voice, the target was a well-known gang figure and his murder was meant to send a powerful message. Van Rooyen and his cohorts were the delivery men for that message. Their actions were part of a larger, ongoing war for territory, resources, and respect in the brutal ecosystem of Cape Town's gangs. The investigation would have focused on identifying all members of the hit team. In these situations, police often look for the weakest link, someone who might talk in exchange for a deal. They analyze CCTV footage, cell phone data, and rely on informants to piece together the movements of the suspects before, during, and after the hit. For the prosecution, proving that all three men, including Van Rooyen, shared a common purpose to commit murder, was key. The court found Keenan Van Rooyen guilty, alongside his two accomplices. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for his part in the assassination, a verdict that took another dangerous gunman off the streets. His sentencing, as part of the trio, demonstrates that the law doesn't just punish the person who fires the final shot, it holds the entire team accountable. Van Rooyen's story is a classic tale from the ganglands, a young man caught up in a cycle of violence, carrying out orders from above, and ultimately trading his freedom for a moment of deadly loyalty. So there you have it, 10 individuals, 10 stories of violence, greed, and betrayal. From the high-profile assassination of a musical icon to the grimy turf wars of gangs and the sickeningly cold calculus of insurance policy murders, these cases paint a grim picture. But they also paint a picture of resilience. For every contract killer, there is a team of detectives, prosecutors, and forensic experts working tirelessly, often in the face of incredible danger and intimidation, to piece together the evidence and bring these individuals to justice. These convictions are hard-won victories for the rule of law. The stories of these 10 men are just the tip of the iceberg. They represent a much larger, ongoing battle against organized crime in the Western Cape. Whether it's the desperation that drives someone to kill for a few thousand rand, or the systemic power struggles that lead to assassinations. The fight is far from over. As long as there are people who believe that a life can be bought and sold, this battle will continue on the streets, in the courtrooms, and in the communities affected by this violence every single day. Thanks for watching. That's all for this episode. As always, be safe, stay blessed, and don't forget to like and subscribe.